Hi, this is Eddie with DAC Moto. Appreciate you coming to my channel. And before I get started today, if you would, please subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. Mash that bell or push that bell or ring that bell for future video notifications. And give me a thumbs up. It really helps, and I do appreciate it. Today is Tech Monday. So on Mondays we do technical analysis or talk about fixing or repairing things on bikes, how to wire it up, or whatever it may be. But today we're going to talk about fuel, the fuel that we put in our vehicles, and the octane rating of the fuel. Most everybody puts 93 octane in their bikes because they want to get the best performance, but do they understand why they're getting the best performance putting 93 octane? I've seen some people put 87 in, and I've had to do it one time before, and I'm going to get to that part of the story a little later on. What the best situation is if when you're out there traveling on the highway and you come across and you're needing gas and the only thing they have is 87, 86, or even 85 octane. I don't even know if they have 85 out there no more. I've seen it, but for the most part I think it's 87 out there. But what the best case scenario to do in that situation, so you don't have poor performance and end up with more carbon being deposited on the spark plugs and the exhaust system, especially with all the bikes today, modern bikes having catalytic systems in them. You want to be conscious of that. So today we're going to talk about fuels and the fuel additives. You see different fuel additives over here. I got Chevron's Tektron over here. I got Seafoam additive right here, fuel treatment. And then I got Lucas fuel injector cleaner here, which it's empty because I used it on my trip going to South Dakota. And then we have O'Reilly's Octane Booster, and I'll explain to you why the reason I have that here along next to the fuel treatments or fuel additives, more or less fuel cleaners and treatments in that sense. So we all know that gasoline comes from crude oil, and it's made up of carbon atoms, and these carbon atoms create a chain, a carbon chain. Different lengths of chains create different fuels. Methane has one carbon atom chain. Not ethanol. Propane. I'm sorry. Propane has 3 carbon chains, and octane, which is what you find in your gasolines, whether it's 87, 90, 91, 89, 93, octane has 8 carbon chains in it. Now these chains have characteristics that behave differently, like the boiling point, the ignition temperature, and a few other aspects that go along with it. So as fuel is compressed, when you're putting this fuel in your gas tank, in your motorcycle, your car, your pickup truck, obviously it goes through the fuel system, goes through your fuel filter. Most everything's modern today is all fuel injected. Might have a bike out there or two with carbureted still. They were making the KLRs, Kawasaki KLRs, for the longest time with carburetors. I believe now the new KLRs, Kawasaki KLRs, are fuel injected, so no more worries about changing altitudes and stuff like that, or having to worry about carburetors getting gummed up. So good job for Kawasaki finally changing that around. But so as the fuel is compressed, it heats up the air, just like a diesel. A diesel engine doesn't use any kind of ignition source. They don't have a spark plug. They don't have anything that fires the fuel. So in a diesel engine, you have 17, 18, 19 to 1 compression. So as that cylinder is coming up and it's compressing the air that got sucked in through the intake valves, that piston's coming up and it's compressing that heat, and that superheats that heat. So in a diesel engine, what fires the diesel fuel is that hot air. It gets up to 1,000 degrees in a diesel engine. In a car, in a motorcycle, it's a little bit different there. It still gets compressed, it gets heated up, but not like that in a diesel. Most cars are 9.5, 10.5 compression. Higher end sports cars are probably around 11, 11.5 compression. But most motorcycles are all right there around 11, 11.5, 12, to 12.5 compression, depending on the bike itself. V-twins probably have more higher compression because there's only the 2 cylinders there. So what's going on with the fuel and the gasoline you're putting in, if as the piston's compressing it and it's heating it up and that fuel ignites before that spark plug goes off, that's pre-ignition. Back in the day, cars used to do this. Cars from the 50s and 60s, or even 40s and 30s would have pre-ignition. And I'm going to get to how we get to the octane ratings and all that here in a second. But during compression, you may auto ignite, meaning that the fuel's going to explode inside the cylinder before the spark plug even fires itself. So the octane rating in fuels, it helps control that. So when you have a higher octane rating, you can handle, especially if you have a high compression engine, you want to put a higher octane rating in fuel in your vehicle or your motorcycle, because then it can handle that higher compression. If you use 87 in your bike, you're going to notice poor performance. It may sound a little clackily or pinging or something like that. So you always want to use, at least in motorcycles, modern day motorcycles, use 90, 91, 93 octane. I've seen some places with 95 octane. Some people put race fuel in there, 100, 105, 110 octane race fuel, and that's not going to hurt anything really. So the octane rating is more for handling the compression itself, the high compression in performance vehicles and in sport bikes and such, and any kind of bike actually, because like I said, most bikes are all around 11 or 12 compression. So to kind of go back in time about octane, before there was any kind of octane put in fuel, they had problems with pre-ignition. Cars would ping and ding and run rough, and also it would cause issues with the valve seats. The exhaust valve seats would kind of start flaking or pitting because of the pre-ignition going on, and it would affect the exhaust valve seats. So back in 1921, a chemist and his assistants added some tetraethyl lead. They added tetraethyl lead to gasoline, and when they did this, they found out that all that pre-ignition stopped. So from pretty much that point on, from the early 30s, lead was used in gasoline all the way up till, I believe, 1996, when they enacted the Clean Air Act. But they started in the 70s. That's when catalytic converters kind of started being experimented with, and they started in the 70s trying to phase out lead, because obviously, if you got gasoline on your hands, and a lot of people used gasoline to wash their hands back in the day, and you were getting lead absorbed into your skin, into your blood system. And if you were around a car that burnt lead gasoline, you were inhaling that. Of course, as you inhale that, it goes into your bloodstream from the oxygen that as your body supplies your blood with oxygen. So that was bad. So that's why you don't see lead in gasoline. I don't think you see lead anywhere in any kind of fuel anymore. So after they did away with the tetraethyl lead, they came out with BTEX, and you can look that out. It's BTEX. It's a long word. They started adding that, but down the line, this is like in the late 90s, and down the line they found out that this caused health problems too. So that brings us to today, where we have ethanol in our fuel. Now, believe it or not, Henry Ford designed the Model T back in the early 1900s to be able to run on ethanol, but it was way more expensive to extract the ethanol out of corn back then than it was to make gasoline out of crude oil. So it never got popularized back then. And on top of that, all the empires out there that were controlling the oil out there, they didn't want to have anything dipping into their pockets as far as an alternative way. So that's why crude oil has been around for so long, and we still use it today, and we'll still use it in the next 50, probably 75 years from here on out, until electric vehicles and electric bikes, EV bikes and EV vehicles will be the more dominant in the future. But so out there today, you have several choices, but in motorcycles you want to obviously use 93 octane to get the best performance out of your bike, and make sure that that it's running good, and get you don't have much carbon deposits. Carbon deposits is the worst thing. If you ever pull a spark plug, change your spark plugs in your bike, and you see they're black, well, then you're getting too much carbon buildup on them. You want them to have that light brown. That way your air and fuel ratio is doing right. And most modern bikes today with the ECU that's in it can adjust for the altitude, the temperature, the ambient temperature, the fuel that you're putting in it, and sort of. But so we're gonna look at these fuel additives here, and like I said, we got 3 that I brought out today. They all pretty much do the same thing. Some are a little bit maybe better. Some cost anywhere from as little as $4 as much as, you know, $20. I don't have any of the $20 ones here. I think the most expensive one is this one here, the Tektron, and this is probably around somewhere between 10 and $12. Your Seafoam, I think that runs, I think actually they're up there about $9-10 too now. Used to be a lot cheaper. They've gotten expensive over the time. Greed, I guess. I don't know. Then you got the Lucas Injector Cleaner. I think this is, you can get this sometimes on sale for around $5, between $4 and $6. And then the Octane Booster. It's not so much a cleaner, but like it says here, it says it boosts power, it smooths out rough idle, reduces engine knock, ping. So I'll go ahead and just do this one real quick. So if you're traveling, and I just got back from South Dakota a couple weeks ago, and for the most part I was able to find gas stations that had 91 or 93 octane. I did stop at one point, and it wasn't to get fuel, but just to stretch. And they had bags on some of the pumps, and they only had, I think, 2 pumps there, and they had it where it just says 87 octane only. So I don't know if they didn't get a fuel shipment or what was going on. But if you pulled up there on your motorcycle and all they had was 87 fuel to put in your bike, you don't want to travel the next 200-300 miles, you know, on that fuel, because that's just bad for the bike, for the performance and for the exhaust system, especially if you've got the stock exhaust system with a catalytic in it. It's just bad for it. So when you travel, it's always probably best to buy yourself a bottle of Octane Booster. I can't remember what I paid for this, probably $6, maybe $5 or $6 at O'Reilly's there. But this will raise it up 8 points, 8 points of octane. So if you can only find 87 and you put this in, you're going to get about 95 octane of fuel, which will be great, you know, for your travel. And in this bottle here, it says it treats up to 21 gallons. So it's 12-ounce bottle, treats up to 21 gallons. So this could, you know, also you don't want to add more is not going to do any better either. So kind of, some people always pour a whole bottle, and that's not always, you're just wasting the product, really. It's not always best either. So you always just kind of want to go, because they've got it down to a science when they develop this stuff, how much to add to your fuel. This one says that this whole bottle will treat 21 gallons. So you kind of just do the math yourself to figure out if you got a 3-gallon tank, a 4-gallon tank, 5-gallon tank, a 6-gallon tank in your motorcycle, how much to add in there, you know, and to break it down. But this is a good idea to take with you on a travels, you know, going across country. You never know when you're in some back roads, and some of these back road country stores, they don't sell high test, because, you know, it's mostly just people with farm equipment and 4-wheelers and stuff like that are coming around. And a lot of them add their own stuff. And a lot of times you'll just find that it's fuel that's non-ethanol. So that's what they prefer sometimes in those back country gas stations and stuff like that. So this is good to take, like I said, if you're on a long trip and you're worried about coming across somewhere where they don't have 93 octane or 91 or 92 octane fuel. You can put this in your bike and not have to worry about you know, bad ignition, pre-ignition, or heavy carbon deposits and such. So here we got the Chevron's Tektron. To me, I'm saying this is probably one of the better ones out there for the money. You can buy some stuff from Redline, and I think they charge like $18 or $20 a bottle. Is one better than the other? Apples and oranges, I don't know. To me, it's all in the same class, and they all do the same thing. This, you know, maximizes fuel economy, restores lost engine power, reduces rough idle, protects against corrosion, prevents spark plug fouling. And that's probably the biggest point, to help prevent spark plug fouling. But today's fuel, especially 93 octane, they have a lot of additives and detergents in them. The 87, the 86 octane doesn't have as much. So, you know, you're always thinking, well, let me go buy some of this and add it to my vehicle every time. But actually, if you're in your car, in your truck, and you do a lot of, you put in a lot of 87, which everybody's going to do because it's cheaper, you know, whatever, 40, 50, 60 cents cheaper than high test. You don't have to really go buy a bottle of this. Just every now and then, every fourth or fifth tank, fill up with high test, and that'll do the job. It'll help keep your upper cylinder clean, help keep the valves clean, keep the injectors clean, and all that. But if you don't do that practice, then you may want to buy one of these 3 products. But the Tektron, to me, is probably one of the better ones out there for the money and for what it does. I've used it in my bikes. I've used it in my cars. You definitely notice a difference. And you always want to follow the directions that tells you how much to put in. You don't want to overdo it, especially with a product like Tektron here, because it can eat the lining of the inside the motorcycle tank, fuel tank. Most cars have gas, plastic gas cans, plastic gas tanks. But a lot of motorcycles still have metal fuel tanks. They have a lining in there to prevent the rusting. You don't want to overuse this because this will eat that lining, and next thing you know, because no matter where you get fuel at, there's going to be water in the tanks there. It's inevitable. It happens. So you definitely want to not overuse this. And then you got Seafoam here. Cleans injectors, cleans carb jets, stabilizes fuel, controls moisture in fuel. So if you're worried about, when you're traveling and getting bad fuel, take a little bit of this with you, dump it in the tank, and it's going to help control that moisture in there. Cleans deposits, adds lubricity to fuel, and I'll get to that here in a minute. Lubes upper cylinders and de-ices and de-gels. So you can use this in gas or diesel. So if you didn't want to spend the money for this, but actually this is getting just as expensive as this, you can opt for this, and this is really good stuff. When I had my own repair shop a few years back, I would use this to defog or spray out the intake systems in customers' cars and pickup trucks. It really did a good job. It break all that carbon away from the valves, from the valve seats, from around the intake track, and clean up a little bit of the upper cylinder, and clean up some of the spark plugs too. So this is actually pretty good stuff too. And my last one here is Lucas upper cylinder lubricant. This one here, it's only 5 ounces, but it treats up to 25 gallons. And I took it. This is what I used on my trip to South Dakota, and you can see I marked it with lines because my here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I got 5 uses out of this bottle with my motorcycle. My V-Strom has a 5.3 gallon fuel tank. So and the reason I took this and used it wasn't so much because I was worried about the fuel. I use it because it's going to help to lubricate the upper cylinders, and basically, a lot of bikes, like my Suzuki, I believe you have to get the valves adjusted around 15,000. Some Italian bikes, you gotta get the valves adjusted like within 6,000 to 7,000. I think BMW, I can't remember where BMW's at. They might be around 20,000, 25,000 when you get your valves adjusted. My friend Kenny would know that because he's took his bike in a couple of times. He's got and every time they say it's okay. I don't know. But anyways, the reason I used this was because it was adding lubricity to the fuel. So as that valve, if this is my valve, and it's going opening and closing on the cylinder head there, it's that valve spring's it's tight. It brings that valve back up, so it's pounding up against that seat. So the reason I add this was to be able to help to add some lubrication to the fuel, so for that long ride, my valves weren't beating up against the valve seats as significantly as it would without it. So do I use it all the time? No, I use it on this long trip, and so we'll see once I get to that 15,000 mile mark how much the valves will really need to be adjusted if I continue to use this. And I've used it other times. It's just my trip, just not as frequently as probably I should. But it doesn't hurt to use any of these additives. They're all going to help with something. At least get rid of some of the deposits, clean the injector tip nozzles, and probably clean out some of that carbon that's in your exhaust system there too, especially the catalytic muffler part of the exhaust system, if you have a stock system still on there. But you know, there's plenty of other ones out there on the market. These are just the ones that I've used over the years. So I would say this is my first choice here, my second choice, and then my third choice for cleaning out the system. For maintenance, if you want to just use maintenance, either one of these two, the Seafoam or the Lucas itself. Lucas obviously is a little easier to carry with you on a motorcycle. And like I said, this one will treat up to 25 gallons. And that's what I did. I took two of these with me because it's a lot smaller, a lot more compact, lighter than the metal can, and just much easier to carry on a bike. So that was my choice and the reason why I took that was just the easeability to be able to take it with me and put it in one of my compartments or bags or wherever I had it stored at that time. But so that's today's video. That's today's Tech Monday video. A little bit about Octane and the way Octane works, and the fuel additives you can use out there, especially if you obviously this is August, first couple days into August already. In some parts of the country, winter comes early, by as early as about the end of September. In some parts of the country, winter's already setting in by October or so. Around here, here in the north part of Georgia, in the Appalachian Mountains, we don't really start seeing cold weather till about the end of October, mid-November. And it depends. It depends. When I first moved up here, it rained on Halloween night. So, I mean, snowed, not rained, snowed on Halloween night. So a lot depends. But if you're going to store your bike, and obviously during the winter months, you're not going to be out there riding because of the snow or the weather conditions or the leaves. Around here, there's a lot of leaves, so you can't really go through the curves of the mountains too fast because, a lot of debris gets on the road. And then you never know about black ice if you're traveling early in the morning or late at night. You don't want to catch black ice and going into a turn or having to brake in that situation either. But any of these will do, to help stabilize the fuel. This one tells you right there that it's great for putting when you put your vehicles away or whatever for a period of time to help stabilize the fuel. They all pretty much do that. They'll all stabilize the fuel and keep the fuel from going bad in your motorcycle or your car or truck. But and that brings me to one last thing before we go off. I was gonna wasn't really showcasing this as a cleaner, but it's called Mechanic in a Bottle. And I have a lot of small engine equipment stuff, a tiller, wood chipper, and a few other things. I'm probably going to need to use this in my four-wheeler because that's carbureted, and I haven't rid that four-wheeler in a year and a half, 2 years. So I'm probably going to have to put some of this in there when I try to get it rolling. But this is some of the best stuff I've ever found to get your vehicle to start back up and get a lot of that deposits and varnish that the fuel turns into after sitting for a while. Get it out of the system. So this is something you can try too. But basically, when you're going to store your bike over the winter, add a little bit of however much fuel you have in there. Try not to have too much fuel in there, or if you want, because if you live in a situation where there's a lot of humidity, then fill the fuel tank as high all the way up to the top, and then add the proper amount of fuel treatment to it to stabilize that fuel. And most stabilizer will last 6 months. Some last up to 2 years, but it'll get you at least through the winter. So when you do fire that bike and get out there on the road with it, it'll perform right for you. It'll idle good for you and get you good fuel mileage. So that's today's video for Tech Monday. Appreciate you guys coming out here. Appreciate you if you subscribe. Appreciate those who all have subscribed. Thank you much. And again, if you would, subscribe, hit that bell, and give me a thumbs up. And I'll have a video coming out this week here for I'm going to ride through some of the back roads here on my FZ. I have an FZ09. I'm going to do some footage of riding in the back roads back here, and kind of showcase some of the nice roads up here in the North Georgia mountains up here. Plenty of places to go riding, beautiful. If any of you guys ever find yourself coming up this way, message me here on on YouTube, and I'll get with you and we'll hook up and ride, and I'll show you some of the great places to ride. But again, this is Eddie with DAC Moto. Appreciate you coming out. Two Wheels.